Hey everybody, what's going on? Scranton Strangler here for the second part of Show Me the Football. Welcome back. If you're a new viewer, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you are, make sure to follow and or subscribe. And since you are new, this is a part 2. Make sure to check out all the other videos so you're caught up on what exactly we're talking about. Now, any returning viewer, thank you so much. You're the reason we do what we do, so I appreciate you tuning in. Now, speaking of last week, what we're doing is a part 2 because we did our NFC division leader predictions, wild card, playoff, Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff. We're actually going to transition into the AFC side of things. So, super excited. AFC's one of my favorite, there's only two sides, but just all in all, AFC is kind of my side where I tend to read up on things a little bit more, and that's where my favorite team is. So just generally, I know a little bit more about it. So, but we'll go ahead and move into it. This is going to be Show Me the Football. Let me switch my slides for you guys. All right. Awesome. So, again, these are the 16 teams that are going to be in the AFC. We're going to be going over my AFC predictions. This is going to include my division, just all in all, and who I think are going to be the division leaders, the wild card, and then also who are going to make it into the playoffs, AFC championship, and then who's going to be the AFC representative of the in the Super Bowl for the AFC, who I think are going to meet the New Orleans Saints, if you've watched my last video. Spoiler alert. So, we'll go ahead and dive in. The American Football Conference, obviously the AFC, it hadn't been around quite as long as the NFC, but since 1970 is when I'm going to be kind of projecting these stats. Obviously, there's 16 teams, but they have 25 Super Bowls. Now, last video, I actually did say that the NFC had 24 Super Bowls total. That was actually incorrect. So I'm so sorry about that. So it's going to be 27 for the NFC and then 25 for the AFC. So just obviously 2 ahead. Now the most recent is going to be last year's Super Bowl, the 2018, where obviously the New England Patriots won it over the Los Angeles Rams. And then the most Super Bowls in the AFC, much like the NFC, is going to be held to a tie. By 2 teams. The Pittsburgh Steelers had them for quite a while, and then the New England Patriots joined them in the 6th category, which is actually the most Super Bowls in the entire NFL period. So those are the 2 most successful franchises as far as Super Bowls go. Now, speaking of New England, we're going to start off with the Super Bowls division, because rightfully so, they are the Super Bowl winners. So we're going to go ahead and go to the AFC East. Now this one, honestly, it's not too hard. If you look at the other teams, they're so young and they're developing, which is good. But I'm always going to take experience. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to take experience over young talent. So I'm going to go with them. Now here's a stat to think about. Tom Brady was drafted from Michigan in 2000. So that was his first year with New England. Since then, there's been 19 seasons. The New England Patriots have won this division 16 times. So that's 16 out of 19 seasons that they've completely won their division. Now, that in itself right there is mind-blowing. So then, if you want to kind of dig a little bit deeper, you can look up those 3 lost seasons and see what went wrong. Well, the first one is going to be in 2000. It was his first year. Tom Brady played 1 game, and I think he threw 3 passes, completed 1 of them for like 6 yards or something like that. So wasn't obviously it was wasn't his game. The next, so 2000 wasn't his season. He had 1 game. Then you flash forward, 2001, they actually did win it. They did win the division, but then you go to 2002, they didn't. So that was really the lone season that Tom Brady hasn't won that division, because the only other time they didn't win that division was going to be in 2008, and that was when Tom Brady tore his ACL in the season opener against Kansas. So, or I'm scared. Yeah, it was just the season opener. So 3 seasons in the last 19 they haven't won, and Tom Brady didn't play in 2 of those seasons. So Tom Brady's really only lost 1. So I'm gonna hang my hat to the GOAT, obviously the best quarterback of all time. Him and Belichick have the best quarterback duo of all time. So I'm gonna hang my hat on them for this next season as well. You can see their stats in 2000. They're 11-5. They're fantastic at home. It's one of the top 3 places to play. It's one of the hardest places to play in Foxborough. And speaking, that's a testament right there. It's because they're 8-0. That just shows you how good they are. They're 5th overall in offense, 21st in defense, and they don't have the flash like all the other teams do. They're just a overall. Just a well-built and extremely well-coached team. So, they're very disciplined. They're 5th overall in turnovers with positive 10. So they don't make a lot of mental mistakes. They get the ball back. They get the ball to their offense and to the one of the best players in the league, Tom Brady. So, strength. One thing I've always noticed is the Patriots. I don't know who they're talking to, but they never have a tough schedule. You can go back any year. Their schedule is a cakewalk, and it's going to continue this next season. So I'm going to actually pull up my 5 points to why they're going to win that division next year. So my 2019 stats, one is going to be strength of schedule. Again, it's going to be even easier this next year. Last year it was tied for the 22nd toughest schedule in the NFL. This year it's going to be even easier. Like I said, tied for the 27th toughest. And obviously, like I repeated earlier, they have a really weak division. Now another one that I'm going to throw up there is going to be Ben Watson. Now obviously the biggest talk for the Patriots, other than Robert Kraft, is going to be Robert Gronkowski retiring, and how are they going to fill that void with such a dominant and such a stable, just such a dominant player that they've had for season after season. How are they going to replace that void? Well, they go out and they get Watson. He's a big guy. He's definitely proven himself. He's not going to be as aggressive as Gronk. Go up there and get it like him, but I really don't think that there are too many of those out there. So you get what you can get. There's no one that you can really replace Gronk, but you can definitely do the best you can with Ben Watson. I honestly thought that they were going to go with maybe like a Kyle Rudolph, but I actually kind of like Ben Watson a little bit better, in my opinion. So he's played with some fantastic quarterbacks. The next is going to be on the defensive side. Now defense. Bill Belichick is actually going to be calling the plays for the defense this next year. They've gone through defensive coordinator after defensive coordinator, and finally he's going to actually call the plays this year. So I'm actually pretty excited. Statistically, they weren't the best defense in the NFL. They were 21st overall. So let me see real quick. 21st overall. They were 22nd in pass and 11th in the rush. So statistically, they weren't the greatest. But I think that him calling plays will definitely have a positive effect. He's obviously the best coach, might be the best coach ever in the NFL. So with him being a little bit more involved with the team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it's gonna just continue to be better with them. If you don't think that they have a great defense, I know it doesn't show up, but just look at what they did last year in the Super Bowl to the absolute stacked Rams. So my next one is going to be Michael Bennett. They went out and they plugged up the defensive line with Michael Bennett. That's going to be a great addition, who just seems to get passed around to NFL team after NFL team. And then the last one is going to be Julian Edelman. They are actually finalizing this week. They're finalizing a contract extension, so that's just one more, at least one familiar face, because obviously they're going to lose Gronk. Chris Hogan is now gone. So Julian Edelman, I think it's really key to at least keep that connection going while he starts to develop relationship and chemistry with some of those, Keneal Harry, things like that. So that they drafted. So yeah, Patriots are going to win the the AFC East. I'm calling it right now. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was their actual schedule. Let me show you how easy it's going to be for them. Well, we already know that their division isn't really worth a damn, to be 100% honest. So I'm gonna go ahead and cross those off. So all those division games, I'm not gonna say that they're gonna win those all, but I am gonna say they're gonna win their division no matter what. So then, if you really look at the remainder of the teams, I'm gonna highlight for you the the top opponents. Some of those I'm not gonna highlight Houston or Cincinnati or Washington or Philly. They don't have Big Dick Nick who beat them last time, so I'm not going to put them up there. I'm not really worried about them, and I don't think New England is going to be either. So if you look at those other teams, those are the teams that I think can make them give them a run for their money. Pittsburgh, obviously, it's always a pretty decent game between the two. Now Pittsburgh usually loses, but they actually got the better of them last year, so definitely an eye. And then you can never turn an eye to the New York Giants because Eli just has a thing for beating the Patriots. You scroll down, Cleveland Browns. They're obviously going to be and it wasn't updated. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, I'll get to that in a second. Cleveland Browns, they're making a splash. They're supposed to be pretty decent this year, so they can definitely give them a run. Baltimore is one of those teams that seems kind of like the Giants that seem to beat them, but it's just because of that stout defense. Dallas, absolute powerhouse. They're just going to run it down their throats. I think Dallas and obviously Kansas City. So those teams right there, I highlighted. Those are the teams that are gonna give them a run for their money. Now, I'm gonna put this up there. Only one of those tough teams are actually at the other opponent's stadium. It's going to be at Baltimore. It's not up there. That's why I was apologizing earlier. I have to get on my my studio department about it, but no. So Baltimore is actually in Baltimore, and that's all those other matchups are in Foxborough, and we know. I brought up the thing earlier. We know how good they are in Foxborough. They went 8. They were undefeated last year, at their home stadium. So that's just another testament, another reason why the Patriots just have it so easily. So I absolutely expect them to get into the postseason. So we'll actually move on to the AFC South. We'll get out of the Tom Brady era. Hopefully, we will eventually. And we can get some fresh names in there. So we're going to switch over to the AFC South. Now that was owned by the Houston Texans last year, and then the Colts obviously slid into the wild card. And the Jacksonville 1 or 2 years removed from that dominant AFC Championship run and that stout defense, and the Titans as well, making it last year, or 2 years ago. Now, we'll go ahead and do my AFC prediction. I absolutely think that it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts. Why I think that? I think they kind of shocked everybody last year, especially between head coaches, and then Andrew Luck. The offensive line didn't really seem. It was kind of shoddy. We weren't really sure. They didn't really have too many weapons as far as receiving core. We have the one T.Y. Hilton, but that was about it. But then you look at they didn't have a running back, and Andrew Luck, and that was kind of the big one. It was kind of like that porcelain doll. It was like, is he okay? Is he not okay? Is he hurt? Is he not hurt? Is he gonna play? No, he's out for the rest of the year. We're just gonna. So it was just a big question. So no one really expected Indianapolis Colts to do what they did, but now they got obviously a season under their belts. They got a whole off season to kind of get everything right, timing right, and I think that they're going to make a pretty good run, on this season. Overall, they were 10-6. They were 6-2, so that's good. They were strong at home. Overall, they were 7th on offense. So one of the surprise probably the biggest surprise of the Indianapolis Colts last year was Marlon Mack, the running back. He came out of nowhere, and he was a fantasy gold mine. If you didn't know who he was and you picked him up or just picked him up just because he was starting for him, he was getting like 20 points a game at one point, especially towards the end of the season. So Marlon Mack was definitely kind of the surprise character. So I think that and Chris Ballard is their GM is is a brainiac. I think he's a genius. They're a very safe team, I think, and they could have gone out. They absolutely had the cap space, and they absolutely could have gone out and they've gotten the Le'Veon Bell or a Mosley or an Antonio Brown, things like that. They absolutely had it, and I think that they were reserved, and they did a pretty decent job. So we'll go over my 5 points real quick. Of why I think they're going to win the AFC South. Now, their strength of schedule, it is going to be a little bit tougher this year. So that's they're tied for 7th toughest schedule. That's not going to bode well for them. But I think that they kind of own this division. Unless I think Tennessee isn't going to make it, even to a wild card game. Unless Jacksonville or Houston is really the only one in their way, and I just think that Houston's going to take a step backwards this year. They've got offensive line problems. They've got players leaving. So on the defensive side of the ball, they've lost a few players. So I think that this is the Colts' year. All right, we're going to dive into swing on over to the West, AFC West, which is probably one of, this division is tough. I'll tell you that. They've got, obviously, Kansas City, which is like the best team in the AFC other than the Patriots. I don't know how they, it's back and forth between them two, but and the flip-floppy Denver Broncos, you never know what team you're going to get with them. Hopefully they got their guy, but then they got Flacco to stay in for him. Then they have San Diego, which was kind of like the Colts, another surprise team. It's a team that always does okay, but they always seem to shoot themselves in the foot, and last year they were phenomenal. And then the Raiders. Raiders kind of shit the bed last year, unfortunately, but they had a great draft. They had a great offseason. They got a steal of a wide receiver, and they kind of look back. Now, this is actually one of my controversial picks of all of my predictions, because I'm actually going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can you go against when I just said that the Chiefs were like the best team? The Chiefs have issues, internal issues. They're shooting themselves in the foot. And I'll get to that in a second. So, under head coach Anthony Lynn, the 2000 stats, they were just incredible. They had a 12-4 season. It was the exact same. They had the same record as the Chiefs, and they went 7-1 away, which was a better record than Chiefs' away record was. So, 11th overall on offense, 9th overall on defense. What I can say about the Chargers is that overall, from in and out, look at it. The whole team on both sides of the ball, they are probably the just overall best equipped team, and I think that's one of my points. But I'll get down to my 2019 stats of why the Chargers, not the Chiefs, are going to win the division in the West this year. Well, the strength of schedule, it's going to be right about, it's dead smack in the center, actually tied for 16th. That's half. The next one is going to be Kansas City equals bad luck. Like I was saying, they've got, they lost Kareem Hunt, which was, a very underrated running back last year. He was phenomenal. So they lost him. He goes to Cleveland and, suspended, unfortunately, because he can't control himself. And then you switch, and then now they've got the Cheetah, Tyreek Hill, facing charges for abuse. So no charges have been filed, nothing like that. It's under investigation, yada yada. But you just never know. Especially when whenever you look at a Zeke situation or something like that, he gets suspended. I don't see how there's a way that Tyreek Hill doesn't get suspended. So. We're just gonna have to wait and see, but I just think that they're not going to be as dominant and powerful as they were last year, and especially with as a shoddy defense as they had last year. They had it was kind of like looking at college, like the Oklahoma Sooners. They had one of the best offense, but they had the worst defense, so it's kind of hard to overcome that, defense wins championships. Now they have like I was saying earlier, they have the top 3 overall built team. Just from a defensive line, linebacker, safety, going over each position overall, I think they have one of the best built teams. And then the receiving core, they probably have one of the best receiving cores. They've got Williams, Keenan Allen. Then they got there's one more receiver in there, Mike Williams, Tyreek. Anyways, and then they add last year Hunter Henry, tight end. So just all in all, from tight end to all their receivers, I just think that they're one of the best. Again, which is another testament to that other one, the best built team overall. So, and then you look at their safeties. They've got probably the best safety. Now that is, I say that now. Some people are going to say that's a little too early because he's a rookie, hasn't even played yet. But Nasir Adderley, I definitely expect great things from him. And sitting across from Derwin James, I don't see this team, the Los Angeles Chargers, taking any steps back this year. As long as Phillip Rivers stays healthy. I expect them to win the division. Sorry about my Chief fans, but we're gonna switch over to the AFC North. Now the AFC North is probably the absolute most dramatic, chaotic, bruising division in football, in the NFL. There's always drama, there's always chaos, and they're always beating each other. It's absolutely crazy. So I'm going to do a little bit, for my last side, I'm going to do a little bit different on this division because I just don't know who's going to win this division. I do not know. I absolutely don't. So I'm going to talk a little bit about everyone. Now, that is to say, I know that you just thought, from what I said, you thought that I was gonna say the Bengals. Absolutely not. I'm sorry, Bengals, but that's exactly what your team's going to be next year. Is sorry. They got a new coach. Thank goodness that they got Marvin and Hugh out of there. I don't even know why they brought him over. Great defensive mind, but so they swept their coaching staff clean, and they got this new guy, Zach Taylor, and offensive mind, young guy. Hopefully we'll create something, but just I blame it all on Marvin Lewis. He kind of tore this team down from what it was. If you look at the Bengals 5 years ago, or maybe around there, they were in the playoffs. I don't think they won a playoff game, but they make the playoffs. So they've got the weapons. They've got AJ Green. They've got Joe Mixon. They've got Tyler Boyd. They've got John Ross. They absolutely have the cast to do it. I think it was just I honestly think that was the coaching staff is what killed them. Between this team and Tampa Bay, I don't know who is worse. So those are my two worst teams right there. I'll actually be coming out with a ranked NFL sometime. So anyways, we're going to move on. I apologize, Bengals, but that's it. This year is not your year. We're going to actually switch over to the Kings of the North, and that's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens obviously won last year. They had a little switch up and behind Lamar Jackson and that absolute dominant running game. They were the best at running the ball outside of Seattle. Seattle was the best rushing team, and I'm pretty sure that they were second, if I'm not mistaken. First in defense and second in rushing. So they're just built from the inside out. And that's probably the problem, is they don't have some of those outside players kind of helping them out. So John Harbaugh, what he did, they lost a ton of players this offseason, a ton of actual decent, contributing players. So Michael Crabtree, C.J. Mosley, Eric Weddle, Flacco, Terrell Suggs, that's been there since Nam. So They lost a lot of key core players. They had a slow start to free agency, but I think that they did a pretty decent job. And then I think they had a really good draft, actually. So the players that they add, who do they go? They go get Seth Roberts, who has, if you look up, he's been in the league for 2 years. This is coming on his third year. He's a good, solid, third option. He's a good player. And then obviously Hollywood Brown. This is why they just drafted him in the first round. Is they want him to stretch the field. They know they're going to run the ball. They know they're a fantastic running team, and that's why they do it so well. What they're going to want him to do is stretch the field vertically and stretch the field from sideline to sideline, running those crossing routes, those drag routes, those slant routes, and then obviously the big ticket, the fade route. So Hollywood, I was very happy actually, because this is the player that they need. It's kind of it's it's a little interesting because they've had Brown. They've been facing Antonio Brown for so long, since 2010. So for 8-9 years now, and now that they get a little one of their own, hopefully they're looking to give Pittsburgh a little taste of their own medicine right here. So they could absolutely repeat, because like the players that they added, the Hollywood Brown, they added, one of the best safeties in the game, Earl Thomas, Mark Ingram. So the Baltimore Ravens, what I pride them on is they always seem to, they always have a fantastic running game, but when's the last time they had a good running back, a good big running back? They just find these guys out of the woodwork, and they're killing it for him. So they finally add a big name, Mark Ingram, a bruiser, and I think that this is Mark Ingram's going to have a fantastic year. Jalen Ferguson, he was a real dime out of the draft that I really like, and I think he's going to take over for Terrell Suggs and get him coached up, which obviously they know how to play defense in Baltimore, especially in the AFC North, and I think that they'll do a great job. So Baltimore, they could absolutely make it. I just don't know. Is Hollywood going to do that? Can Hollywood do it, essentially? Let's go over to Pittsburgh, shall we? So the Pittsburgh Steelers, under Mike Tomlin, I got obviously that top point right there. This last season was the most dramatic season ever for a team, if that's fair to say. Pretty, if not the most, then probably up there. So Pittsburgh, they had in a calendar year, in 365 days, they lost two of the best, offensive players at their positions, arguably. Le'Veon Bell was first. He didn't even play with them. He doesn't even play football for a year. He turns down money, and because I don't want to play with y'all, it's just not that fit. It's time for this marriage to end. And then obviously Antonio Brown, who's lost his mind, and has seemed to calm down lately, but as of late, currently, but just Twitter after Twitter, or a month ago or so. But just all in all, just a very dramatic team. People calling out other players. They lose huge players. Ryan Shazier. Hope he does well. People are calling out Mike Tomlin, which this is his first. He hadn't even had a losing season yet. So never had a losing. This is his worst season pretty much since he's been there. So Pittsburgh Steelers, they can absolutely do it. Why? Because they've never been an underdog, and I think no one's really paying attention to them right now, and they're going to sleep on them because they think that they're floating underwater right now. I think that they're fine. I think what they did, they killed the cancer. Obviously, they had a great step in with James Conner last year. Is he a long-term fix? I don't know. That's a pretty tough one. I love the kid. He's a grinder. He's great spirit. His health concerns me absolutely. And if you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers passing offense, it will actually surprise you because they're 31st in rushing offense last season. So, and fourth overall in total offense. So that just shows you how good their passing game is. So I expect them to, kind of him to step up and step into a big role this season. From first year to second year, he became a better receiving back, which is absolutely needed. Taking over the great Le'Veon Bell, which is the best receiving back in the game, pretty much. So Pittsburgh Steelers. So they killed the cancer is what they did. They got the negative vibes out of there. They got the players that don't want to be there out of there. Like Mike Tomlin says, we don't want hostages. They don't want hostages on their team. So if you don't want to play for them, then get the hell out. So they've got a young team, a defense that I'm very excited about. Which kind of segues into my next thing. Devin Bush, a very, very talked about player. They moved up in the draft to get him to the 10th spot, and they picked him up. They got rid of a few picks for him, so this guy better turn out pretty well. Obviously, they're trying to replace Ryan Shazier, and if you think about it, it would be so crazy if the Steelers still had Ryan Shazier. It would be scary how good they would be, because he was the top 3 middle linebacker in the game. And when he went out, it just really they not only lost a body, they lost the speed sideline to sideline. He was, I think, the fastest player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they released, I don't know if y'all remember, there was a Twitter video they released of him, beating Antonio and all them in a foot race after practice. So he's the fast player. So they lost a lot. They didn't just lose, and then my third point was the leader. He was the captain of the defense. So then you got to get another guy in there and hope he, kind of learns the call outs and can, read as fast as Shazier could. So I just think Devin Bush is going to be a great fit for them. And then last year, if you look, I'm going to throw out, if you actually look at the Pittsburgh Steelers losses, or non-wins, it was like flukish. It was weird. It doesn't really happen. I know I kind of talked about that last week, like how the Saints had some really crazy, the last 2 seasons of theirs have ended crazy, in the playoffs. Well, the Steelers losses this year were just kind of weird. I'm going to actually bring them up right now. The week 1, they tied the Browns. Baker Mayfield didn't play. They had Tyrod Taylor out there. It was just weird. They missed a kick at the end to win it. It was just a fluke. It was like they were sleepwalking. Now Pittsburgh is known to start slow, because even in week 2, they were going against Kansas City, and they started out 20. They were down 21-0, so they had to fight back, and they lost. It was like 42-37. I know they only lost by like 5 points, lost to Kansas City. So I'm not saying that it was a fluke loss, but if you only lose by 5 points and you started out down 21-0, you overcame it. If you would have played like you did, throughout the game to get up to that point, like you did in the first half, you have a lot better shot at winning. The next one is going to be let's see, fluke mistake. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I don't have it in there. That was actually going to be against Denver. These guys are fantastic. Pittsburgh is fantastic at especially with Antonio Brown versus Ben. That connection with getting those games late. Throwing it in tight quarters, throwing it on sideline catches. Tony 2 taps. Obviously Antonio Brown. So. That was one of the big plays, the Denver, that caused kind of the riffle in the Pittsburgh, but it was just kind of a fluke play. The nose tackle, the defensive nose tackle, stood up and just snagged the interception that right out of Ben. It was a fantastic play by Denver, but just something that you don't ever see from Ben, so that was that was fluky. Sleepwalking in LA, they were playing the Chargers up by multiple scores, and then they allowed just this absolute crazy comeback. I will throw out there that the refs handed them that game, with if you ever remember I don't know if y'all remember the game, but there was on a deep touchdown pass, like their first touchdown. Anyways, I'm not going to get into it, but so that was a very flukish play. Pittsburgh Steelers, they're slow starters and they're good finishers, and this one obviously they didn't finish well in this game, which you don't usually see in Pittsburgh. And then my last one is going to be the heartbreaker in New Orleans. They were this close to beating New Orleans at the end of the year. And unfortunately, there was a fumble by Juju, which was his first fumble. So, just a lot of weird things that happened. Those were 5 losses right there that happened to them, and the only other one that I can think of is like the Ravens beat them early in the week. That happens a lot. Ravens, and this is a chaotic. A chaotic division. Everyone beats each other. There's never like a for sure winner in this one. It's very rare. So Pittsburgh Steelers could absolutely win the division. is my takeaway from this. Now I'm going to switch over to the Browns because they're the other team in this. New coach Freddie Kitchens. The Browns finally have people's attention, and they finally have the coaching, the leader, and the player, and the talent, and they have it in abundance. They had a top 3, which I've one of my points down there, a top 3 off season. They absolutely loaded up. They've got Odell Beckham Jr. They've got Kareem Hunt, Olivier Vernon, Sheldon Richardson. They got some steals in this offseason, and they're not even done because there's still Gerald McCoy out there, which is rumored to sign, but we'll see. We'll see if it happens. They're rumored to sign with another team, but are still looking. I've also heard that they're looking at the Browns and the Patriots, so you never know. But one of my points is going to be Baker Mayfield. Most accurate passer in that rookie draft last year. Not saying anything, against the Darnolds and the Allens, all that kind of stuff, and the Rosens, but Baker was the best. It was the right pick. He's a competitor. He's a guy that can just turn. He changes cultures, and that's what they needed. They needed a culture change, and another one is that they have no Hugh. They got Hugh Jackson out of there, and I think that was the best thing that they did. Him and Marvin Lewis are cancer, and I think they just needed to get him out of there. The fact that Cincinnati brought Hugh after he was done with the Browns was just he was signing his own termination form. I think Marvin was, so that was just idiotic. So they no longer have Hugh. I mentioned the top 3 off season. They had an incredible solid draft. They got players that they needed, and that they're quality players. They needed a cornerback. Well, they go out and they get Greedy Williams, which is one of the which was sought out to be the top, if not second, cornerback in the draft. So that was their first pick. Then they go out and they get Sheldrick, a good linebacker, a safety. They go out and get the safety Sheldrick. They go out and get Mac Wilson, a linebacker from Alabama, and I commend people, not always as early as some people do it, but they got a kicker in the draft, believe it or not. Austin Seibert, which was like one of the best kickers in college football. He's got a few records. He almost had like the most points. I know he was a Sooner graduate. He was over there, so he'll join his buddy Baker, but he almost had like the Oklahoma scoring record of all time. I think that's like with DeMarco, and I know someone broke up, but anyways. And then their schedule. They had a tough ass schedule last year. They were they were 5th, and they're jumping from 5th to 23rd. So they're gonna have a lot easier schedule. Sometimes it's nice to kind of get some of those easier teams so you can plan ahead a little bit for those teams that those bigger brothers like the Steelers or the Ravens and things like that. So so they can absolutely get the Cleveland Browns. I absolutely think that they can make the playoffs. and win the division. Win the division, make the playoffs, and possibly go further in there. So, speaking of the playoffs, this is going to be where I'm going to end everything. We talked about last week my projections of the wild card, division, conference, and Super Bowl. And now we're going to fill it out with the AFC side. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up those 4 division winners, and I'm going with the AFC North. I am going to go with Pittsburgh. Similar to the Patriots thing, I go with experience, and with a league with one veteran Super Bowl winning quarterback, I'm going to pick him over those younger second year guys. So, and I'm not including Andy Dalton in there. I don't think that they're going to beat anybody next year. So, in the division. But anyway, so I'm going to throw the Steelers in there. So those are going to be my top 4 division winners. My 5 and 6. I'm actually going to go Chiefs and the Browns. Browns are going to sneak it into a wild card. And the Chiefs, it's going to be a similar situation like it was last year, where the Chiefs and the Chargers are both pretty much 12-4, 11-5, somewhere right in there, right next to each other, 13-3 maybe even, and one of them beat one. The other, it's just you can flip flop them, but I'm picking Chargers to win the division. But you can't have the Chiefs not making the playoffs because they're just phenomenal. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and throw out, in between the Colts and the Chiefs and the Steelers and the Browns, well, you've got to I picked the Chiefs and the Steelers. And Chiefs, they were this close to going to the Super Bowl playoff. I got 2 F's up there. Anyways, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, that's actually how it's spelled. So anyways, the Chiefs and the Chargers, I'm going with the Chiefs. And then the Patriots and the Steelers, well, they got them once. I'll give them, the Patriots may win the first game, but I'm giving the Steelers and the Chiefs to the AFC Championship. Patriots, I think that they're great, but they're slowly decreasing. And although that they're going to have a cakewalk through the year, maybe they're just not going to be prepared, especially with the first round bye. So this is going to be their first true test, possibly even a revenge game for the Steelers. So that'll be some momentum. It all depends. They play in the first week of the season, so we'll kind of see how things go. But I'm picking the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Patriots. They finally turned that corner last year, and I think that they can keep it going. And then the Chiefs over the Chargers. Just like last year, I think that the Chargers have an overall better team, but I think Patrick Mahomes is the future of the NFL, and I'm super excited. And with the whole cheetah issue with Tyreek Hill, obviously this is the playoffs, so he's not going to. The suspension will be up by then. So, and then the Chiefs and the Steelers battle it out. Really. That's a really tough one, but I'm actually going to go with the Chiefs. I think that the Chiefs and the Saints are going to be meeting each other in the Super Bowl. I think that's a hell of a run. I didn't pick who I think is going to win that game. I'm going to have plenty of Super Bowl predictions throughout the year, and I just didn't want to. But I will say that I think it would be really cool if Breeze got one more and retired and kind of rode out into the sunset kind of thing. So who knows? I don't even know if he's even thinking about retirement, but Brady, similar kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, Ben too. So you got a bunch of veteran quarterbacks. Quarterbacks is obviously the number one position in the NFL. If you don't have a quarterback, then really nothing else matters. That's the first step that you got to do. So I'm picking the Chiefs and the Saints. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if I'm absolutely crazy or if you think that that's pretty good assumption. Let me know who, in that scenario between the Chiefs and the Saints, who you think would win. I think it's a pretty interesting conversation, at least. So, again, I really thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to follow and or subscribe. I've got a Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, obviously, and then if you like horror horror movies, you like scary things, don't forget to check out Metalhead Threads down at the bottom. I've got that link right there. Give it a try. Again, guys, love you so much, and hope y'all have a good night. Bye.